Welcome back to Sales is Cool, where we chat with people who crush it in sales. We're very excited to introduce today's guest, Arush Lakhani.
Arush just took the helm as VP of Sales at Cloud Eagle, absolutely dominating at Gartner for 6.
From Airtel to KPI, leading killer teams at Gartner, Arush knows how to build winning sales cultures. And today we're diving into exactly that, right? Scaling sales teams, value-based selling, and something that's on top of everyone's mind, how AI is shaking up the sales world.
So grab your coffee, take notes, and let's get into it with the sales leader who proves that sales is really cool, Arush Lakhani. Welcome, Arush.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for such a kind introduction. I'm really excited
Yeah,
to be speaking with both of you.
So our first question to you: you've led high performing teams at both Airtel and Gartner. What are some of the non-obvious best practices for scaling teams that you've learned the hard way?
I think there's nothing non-obvious about it, and that's the answer. Because every time you see, I wouldn't even say doing well. Anyone who's like sort of better than the average, and it could be an individual, it could be an organization, it could be a team. The first thing that comes to anyone's mind is there must be something they're doing that we are like what you call the silver bullet. Like there must be something that you're doing. In reality, like maybe that's true, Karthik and Soumya. Maybe that's true for like 5-10% of these exceptional people, these dynamic sales guys who can rally their troops behind them, or very smart people. But for people who are not blessed like me with like amazing brains and not the typical sales guys, I think what works for us day in day out is just following the very obvious steps that are there, but then be very consistent and diligent in doing them. So my strategy for any sort of problem, not just sales and otherwise as well in life, has just been very simple. Go gather the facts, as many as you can, about the problem. Today, that can be probably done in like a few minutes. You can just, if you want to like build a killer sales team, you go to ChatGPT and say, hey, give me 10 things that killer sales teams have been doing over the last 50 years in enterprise sales. Make it obvious. They'll give you that. And then just take those 10 things and be very honest with whether those 10 things are being executed on the ground or not. And then figure out a way to do it. Yeah, of course, the devil lies in the details. You obviously get better at execution like with every step. But then the overarching theme is just this, that you essentially get these points out, mark progress against each one of them, and see how much of it has done. Like, is it what needs improvement? Is it your communication? Is the strategy there? Do you have your numbers in place? Are you supporting your teams the right way? And I think if all of that is done properly, I would actually group them into these three things. That is strategy, communication, and support. I think that's my team building or high growth mantra.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think way back when in Gartner, they used to say successful people do things that are difficult consistently, so that it becomes easier for them. I think that the truth lies in what you said. Right? Find out what you need to execute, and then just boringly execute.
Yeah. You can always make it interesting because when you actually sit down and execute, you'll realize, yeah, it just sounds so much simpler than it is.
And I think this is a good segue to my next question. How do you approach communicating your vision to your team? And in most high growth teams, the targets are aggressive, journey is ambiguous, painful sometimes. How do you communicate that vision?
I feel like with communication, it's less to do with the how, but I think it's more to do with what you're communicating to your team. I think where I've seen myself and other leaders before me fail is breaking the problem down to the level of a rep. So as a leader or a sales manager, I think your vantage point is very, very different. You've done this for far longer. You understand these things fairly better. When you're telling it to your rep, it needs to be broken down into a language that they understand. Like for example, let's just pick something very, very simple like writing growth. If you've been given a target to probably write growth, the way to do would be to break down your entire pipeline build by quarter, by stages. You should know your numbers like really well. What sort of conversion rates? How long does the deal stay? How long is the deal staying in what pipeline? What stage of a pipeline? What kind of blockers there are? And I think once you gather that data on your own, you have a very clear idea of how much, say, top of the pipeline needs to go every month, every week. And then you can again break it down rep wise. And now that sliver of information now needs to be communicated to your rep. yeah, you can run them through the strategy, but it's never on them, it's on me. So my idea here is to break down the problem for them and give them that, hey, this is what you need to do, that's all, you got to trust me. I think that does two things. One, it makes it easy for them to understand this, and second, I think that whole anxiety around what would solve this for me goes away, because now it's on the manager.
We always hear the playbook for success being something VPs and sales managers and leaders keep in their pocket, right? What's yours from being IC at Airtel and a sales manager at Gartner and now VP? Do you have like a playbook that you execute, for growing? If you do, could you give us a glimpse of what that is?
What we did last year, we did in Gartner, we did Eagle once as an AE, and then last year the team hit Eagle numbers as well. So on the 2nd of Jan, I kind of told them that this is the target that we're planning to achieve. So it was like about 500% or something of quota. I said, if we're not doing this, because you guys have been doing well over the last 1 or 2 years, but if we are not like going for the highest mark, then I think what's the whole point then? What's the whole point of like being so diligent about it and all of this? When you work with firms like Gartner, one of the best things that happens is, you get a set of people around you, your peers are just so smart that I think most of the work gets done through that. So you have all the information available and break it down, communicate the way you have to, and then, go down supporting on a daily basis. It could also, like I was saying, being emotionally available with these guys is important. And I think one other thing that I had missed was when all of this happens with your reps, I think when you gain that sort of confidence, the reps also then open up. So, this thing when companies are trying to sit in five execs sitting in a room and asking, hey, why is sales not happening? Go ask your rep why the sales isn't happening. That guy is the one who's facing the customer. If you ask him nicely, he will actually tell you why this isn't getting sold. So if you can solve these problems on a daily basis, yeah. How it has probably evolved over time is with Airtel, I think I was more working as an IC, and I think my main characteristics were main issues, things that I was trying to learn were probably how to position my product, how to probably build relationships. With Gartner, that sort of changed. I went from selling to mid level to I started selling to CEOs. I think there the issues then started changing. I started focusing more on exec communication, started learning how to, be comfortable enough to give out my idea in a meeting without, or in front of a client without being like overtly scared. Understood that CEOs are human beings as well. And I think when you start handling a team, then you start thinking long term, like, okay, how's this quarter looking? How are my reps going to work? And you start territory planning, you start thinking 2 years in ahead, you start thinking bigger things like retention and growth. How does that work? And I think in the recent role, this has gone a step beyond. I'm now thinking ICPs. I'm now thinking what are the other revenue models apart from outbound. I'm now thinking how does cross-functional teams talk to each other. So I think those things keep changing, but the basics remain the same. Like today, if I'm looking at what's going to be another revenue charter except from outbound, it's still the same. Read about it as much as possible and then go at it executing it on the ground. So
I was just curious, did you always know you wanted to be in sales? What was that journey like? Probably taking you back to earlier days, early career days.
yeah, no, I didn't. Honestly speaking, I took it because this was the firm that was paying me the most out of my MBA. So this was the first firm that came in. They had the highest package. Had done my internship for a consulting firm, one of the big fours. I knew I didn't want to do that at least. So I did it for 3 months and I'm like, this is not really my cup of tea. I am much better. While I'm not like a out and out extrovert, I do feel like I'm better off communicating, talking. I've always been into public speaking since forever. I've, used to do emceeing, then used to host things. So I knew that, okay, I could talk probably, and then the rest of it just happened. But once I came in, I think I realized that I'm really liking it. I have never not liked it. So it, like, right from day one, I've had issues where I'm trying to probably solve a problem, had a bad quarter, had a bad year, but I've never really like disliked the profession. I feel it gives me a lot of freedom. It gives me a lot of, fun things to do, new things to learn, meet interesting people. So, yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Also, picking up from what you said, right? Like you had a knack for public speaking, for communication. You also had a drive, and you were clearly interested in, let's say, the monetary benefits the role offers and the kind of scope for growth, etc. Are these things similar to what you look for in your reps now? Like, what are some of those traits or skills? And some part of it is teachable, some part of it is more innate to someone. But what are you looking for in your?
Yeah, I mean, I think parts of it is similar. Like you are obviously looking for exact communication because not only just good language, but the clarity of thought needs to be there. There are some very obvious ones. Like you ask anyone who's interviewed any person ever, and they'll say, "Hey, I'm looking for someone who's hungry." I have probably understood now how to sort of identify that hunger sometimes, and sometimes it might just look like sometimes, and again, we all go wrong, but I think some of the obvious ones are looking for someone who's hungry, looking for someone who's, I feel, commercially curious. I don't know what that means, but what exactly, I know what that means. Some of this is now intuition, but someone who likes to know not just the technology, but how the business operates. And then some of them I feel have now started coming. Now, some of them are non obvious. So, for example, I try and pick someone who's into sports, for example. I feel like if anyone is into any sort of competitive sports, they would understand, how to win. I think that's been one, and coachability is another because at the end of the day, you have to. I feel like you work better with someone when the line of communication is open, and they can tell you what they feel. If you have a feedback without the fear of upsetting them, you should be able to tell them this. One of my earlier leaders used to say that there is a skill and there is will. You can always teach skill, you can't teach someone will. So I'm trying to always identify will. That could come from anything.
Right. No, and I think that's fair, right? I do want to pick your brain on something you mentioned earlier when you said how I think it was at where it was more relationship based selling. And I know through conversations and there's something value based selling. For the uninitiated like me, if you don't mind spending some time differentiating the two, and what your preference, you coach your team to do more of.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was actually just yesterday, some CRO from one of the firms had done this went viral that post that, hey, should I hire, a sales head or a VP of sales who comes with his own Rolodex, for example? And does that still work? Even to a point that if I'm a banking software, should I just probably look at someone who's sold to banks in the past? And I think that's always this never-ending debate. And I think now more and more over the last few years, as everyone is getting more information to data, I feel like this relationship selling in a way is phasing out. I am like squarely in that corner where of this debate where I say that relationships would probably get you in the door. The buyer is going to like you, but I feel no one today in this day and age would buy like a 30, 40, 50K software just based on relationship. It has to be based on simple things. You can call it value selling, you can call it challenger sales. But what I mean is not just going there and meeting the person, but actually listening to them, understanding, do your research, know what the problems this guy might be facing. Be bold enough, especially when you're like selling something which is non-obvious. Gartner's advisory solutions were non-obvious. What I'm selling right now is SaaS management, which is again very, very new as a category. So in most of the cases, I have, or me or my reps would have to go and explain what this does first before I can start showing my features. And in these things, you have to really break down. You have to separate your product from the problem that you're trying to solve, and then try and first make space for that problem. So sometimes you might find a buyer who's problem aware, and then you'll find a buyer who's probably solution aware. But all of this has almost nothing to do with relationships. Yeah, you should be likable. Yeah. No one likes to talk to someone who's in like, but I feel like that doesn't, it probably might get you the first meeting. Like people sometimes say, hey, I'll come and I'll get my 5 clients. No, what you will probably get is 5 introductions. You will probably get your new firm in the door, but no one is replacing their old infra, old software, old ways of doing just because a rep moved. So it's got to be a little bit more. I'm not saying just like throw away the relationship bit and like become all mechanical, but build on top of it. Not just don't go with the fact that hey, because I've sold in this industry, I think now I'm a better fit here and I should go over someone with less experience. Like I should be preferred over someone who has less experience, but is way more curious about doing things. Yes.
Uh, you've been a winner. Right? You've received top honor, Eagle Award. You said you won it yourself as an individual and as a team, and you had multiple winners circles. So this means you are in top echelon of sales achievers, right? If you were to look back and be able to identify what sets you apart from the rest of the pack, the rest of us who didn't achieve those things, right? What makes you different?
I think a lot of it, Karthik, is also luck. It's not always just on one individual. I think, like I was saying, I've been fortunate enough to work with leaders, with teams, with organizations who have enabled this. I think we just sometimes get blinded by like our own ability and say, yeah, this is all me. But yeah, a lot of this is just good coaching right from the start. I was fortunate enough to get into a good college, got a good org from day one. Airtel Business, I think, set up a lot of these sales basics very nicely. And I owe a lot of it to my, previous managers. But I think apart from that, what I do really well is just being consistent and diligent with just the basics. I try and not. I've always been curious. I've always been someone who reads a lot. So for me, I think there is there's this book called The Mindset. It's from this author called Carol Dweck. And I think I must have bought like 7, 8 copies of that book till now and gifted it to people. It's a small book. You would probably take like 2 weeks, 3 weeks to read it, but it just kind of changes your mindset. Hence the name. It just says that fixed mindset versus growth mindset. That is, in any circumstances, you should come in thinking, hey, I don't think I know this well, and let me get information and let me form an opinion on it based on information that's available. And sometimes, if you can like put your preconceived notions away and sort of think of a problem objectively, I think in most of the cases the answer comes. So I'm never this guy who should have been in sales to begin with. Like I'm not a typical extrovert. You will not find me going and talking to people in like a gathering. I'm not too loud. I don't like to like go out so much on weekends. So I'm not really your typical sales guy. I think what works with me is I understand systems very well. I understand bigger pieces of the puzzles. More a nerdy guy than like your typical flashy sales guy. But I think that works because, like I was saying, these days what's needed is less charm and charisma, and I think more solving the problem. And as I think going up the ladder, I'm realizing that's coming in more in use because now I can understand bigger pieces of a puzzle and say, okay, maybe this would work, maybe that would work. So just being very, very curious, and you can give me, a new piece of information and I'll be ready to change my opinion on some of my really core principles as well. So I think just that is what has worked for me.
Yeah, I think sometimes the best salespeople across roles, across industries, across solutions are the ones that have this learning agility, right? The
Yeah.
ability to take something from somewhere and
Right.
see how used in different sort of scenarios. Okay, what's that one moment that you look back on that defined your leadership style?
Like I was talking about one-on-ones, if you remember earlier, that that sort of changed the game for me. I think this was about 3 or 4 years back. 3 years back, I was just going through like one of these bad quarters, and yeah, it happened over a series of events, I'm sure. But like, what really clicked for me was I was trying to push someone to do something, and quarter ended, and I think we were sitting post 12 something, and was trying to have a heart to heart with them, and I'm like, hey man, like we could have done this. It's just like these 1 or 2 or 3 things didn't work well. And, he sort of told me this in a very. This was a moment where I think he was also very vulnerable, and he said, I kind of knew that this would happen, but I just didn't. I was not confident enough to maybe tell you this. And more than that, probably in a team setting, that doesn't come out because people are always thinking, hey, how will I look if I kind of say this in front of a team? And I think that kind of hit me that I'm just trying to be this person who wants to talk from a podium and say, okay, do this, do that. I have to really first know how to listen to people, and that really can't happen always in a group setting. So this kind of changed my mindset to like a team is always like a spoke where you should be connected to each one of these guys and do a lot more one-on-ones. I think from that time onwards, how I interact with my team went from being 70% team meetings, 30% one-on-ones to 80% one-on-ones. I do probably one half an hour team stand up in a week, and that's also for rewards and recognition. Like, let's just say who did what well, and then I give them the time that, hey, listen, if you guys have something to bounce off each other, do it. But hey, they are coming to office, they can do this on their own. I don't need to tell them this. Strategy is always high level strategy cannot be given to someone every week. Like, what are we going to talk about? So I think that changed for me. Like I do trend again. There are pitfalls to that because if you sometimes get too involved with a rep's problems, that can be manipulated as well sometimes. But yeah, you learn from your mistake. But that has been, I think, that changed things for me.
I think you have to, that the only downside to that is to ensure you're not being delegated upwards, right? And you have to
Yeah,
just keep that fine balance of being there. You're being an adult, you're their parent, their friend, right? And I think that's
yeah.
yes.
You have to give away this idea that you need to be liked. Uh, there is a one-on-one connect between you and your rep, but you're not their friend, and you should be able to, know that this person does not like me. I am going to be a pain in their life sometimes, but we're all trying to get something done. So yeah, to give that away, that idea of being liked has to.
We do want to switch gears and spend some time on AI. And I know you mentioned this a lot, but I think you are somebody who's quite enthused by how much it's democratized knowledge and made information available for everyone. Would really like to speak in two parts about this. One is its impact on your own life, professionally, how your workflow has changed, and then maybe a little bit of time on how it could really evolve sales.
Yeah, I think this is something I've been like myself being very passionate about. Like I was telling you, I think of sales or any of these in a more in a system manner. So for me, like as soon as I started managing teams and groups of people, I was always looking for things of parts of functions that could be probably commoditized in a way, could be repeated, and then eventually from there automated. So, as in a sales process, we see a lot of times things that have 20% impact would take 80% of your time. For example, an AE who is very good at closing is still spending 60% of his time prospecting. And as technology is evolving, as LLMs are coming in, I mean, I kind of could think through that even before LLMs became a thing, even with simple chatbots that, hey, listen, if there was a way we're just picking up emails from a folder and then my guy is sending this to 30 people, if there was a way where, maybe with a no code, low code, we could probably automate some parts of it, this could work so well. And I think even if you look at, so that's one with LLMs, I think that has become like really easy to do. But also, I think if you look at professions, you will see that a lot of these professions have been hit by technology. So, like you look at HR, for example, recruitment tech is way out there. Like there are so many good big firms who are trying to help recruiters. You are trying to look at researchers at the back end. You're trying to look at marketers, for example. I mean, there are so many good softwares for marketers, right, to help them. What's there for sales guys? Like till 2 years back, the best we had was a reporting, which I don't think was helping sales guys. Was like it's more a burden. So I think sales hasn't been hit with that kind of assistive technology. This was like maybe 2 years back. In the last 2 years, we've seen a lot of these firms become big. Like there were smaller startups like Gong, for example, was pretty small right till like COVID. I remember them doing their initial testing somewhere in 2019. Now Gong's become like a go-to thing, or a Fireflies has become a go-to thing. So when I look at the impact of AI, I think this would be in like three ways. I think one of them is first assisting the rep. Like a lot of activities that the rep does today can be automated. Finding contacts, writing specialized emails, right up till, so you have this SDR BDR function and then you have the AE. I feel like over time the entire SDR BDR function, I'm not saying replacing SDR BDRs, but like increasing their efficiencies. These SDR BDRs can then function as first level AEs, because with the use of LLMs and automation, we should be able to now automate this entire, right from searching a persona, drafting a message, all the way to them coming to that first meeting to talk to. And I think Karthik, we were talking that you were telling a very interesting idea that when do we interact with the at what point does my rep interact? We can start thinking about those questions a lot more openly if we are not busy going through LinkedIn and finding contacts all the time. A lot of time gets wasted there. So I think that is one area which is going to get hit, is getting hit pretty hard. The second, I think, is also the intelligence that comes in each of these deals. So today, a lot of this is manual, intuition, gut based. That hey, we do these frameworks. So we've moved from band to medics to GPCTBI. These could keep evolving. Why stop at six characteristics in a deal? Why not do 600? Why shouldn't I know that maybe my deal got stuck at stage B because I didn't discuss pricing, or maybe this ICP is not right? I think all that needs is just research. So if I had six people today going through my pipeline, probably for a month, they can give me these things. AI, I think, with good data, sales leaders should be able to, in maybe a few, not even years, man, quarters, I think, should be able to know very like detailed level. Maybe this is how my rep is doing, and this is where my pipeline is. And I think in extension to that, the third one will be the coaching. When I was saying let's do a SWOT analysis, again, why stop at four? Why not go to 400 different characteristics of my AE? I should have and this is where like behavioral science comes in, where you should know what makes your AE tick, what works with them, what doesn't work with them. How should you be communicating? I think all of that intelligence can come in. So pipeline level intelligence, deal level intelligence, and then a lot of automation to go with. I think a lot can be done, in the field of sales with intelligence coming.
So, Arush, what is the book you've read or a show you watched recently that changed your perspective on life?
So the book I read recently, there's a book called Beginning of Infinity. It's by David Deutsch. So it actually took about 9 months for me to read it. The core idea of it is it says that human intelligence is in a way ever expanding, and rather than spending time on conserving and using things with more mindfulness, we should be looking at compounding effects. Essentially, the idea that humans are never going to run out of energy and we are never going to run out of intelligence. It'll only keep multiplying. It's a very dense book. It takes a lot of time.
If you could master one skill overnight, what would it be?
Skill, I don't know if it's a skill, and this is a very non-work answer, but I've always been an aviation enthusiast, and I'm trying to like get to a point where I get like a private flying license. If I can do that overnight, I would like to do that tomorrow and not wait for like 2 years. I really have loved flying all my life, and only recently when I was sitting for this license, this is the first time I kind of like saw it firsthand how these cockpits look. And I've not been in an aircraft, but I've seen the simulations and all. But I could just imagine what it would feel to kind of fly. So if I could do that, yes. That's I know it's not a sales answer, but yeah, not everything.
The next question is even more not sales. You're a coffee or a tea person, and how do you take it?
A bit of both. Have traditionally always been a tea person, but then like I think once your life becomes busy and you come, the lack of sleep is there, then you need coffee sometimes. But I'm not really someone who gets very deep into the kind of coffee I need. With tea, yes, I think it has over time. I've now have a very specific method of how I make my own tea. Still not someone who would like go and say, "Hey, I don't like this," or "I don't like." I'll take it. It's fine. But if I have a choice, I make a very good tea.
At least you do matcha tea. Sonia would have been a fan.
I think there's a good enough population that likes matcha, so I have people out there.
Yeah, I've tried. I've tried well, okay, I like it. Okay, fine.
I'm gonna
No comments. Yeah.
Okay, you spoke about for sleepless nights, right? What's your other strategy for managing stress during the quarter ends, the year ends, the month ends? What do you do?
I've been meditating. I think that's another thing that has been sort of a game changer for me. I feel like I was like maybe 3 or 4 years back diagnosed with mild ADHD, and I realized that there is either like meds for it, or second is just try meditating. There are multiple apps for it as well. There is an app by Sam Harris. I'm forgetting the name, but I think for basics, Headspace is good enough. So they have multiple courses. So even at 20, like there is a saying which says you should meditate 20 minutes. And if you can't find 20 minutes, you should meditate for 2 hours at least every day, because then your life's too busy. obviously. Second is just better organizing your own working areas. So like virtually also, everything is in a note, everything is in a sheet. I'm not remembering everything. So when I switch something off, it's off my mind. I know I can go back and reload this. Also just have like a good physical space to kind of work. So there will be situations which will get stressful, but yeah, you can do your bit to kind of manage. So yeah, that's what works.
Next question, Arush. What's the one thing that most people misunderstand about you?
I think sometimes in a situation I always have like two options to say the right thing and then or to say the funny thing. And sometimes I'm saying the funny thing just because I feel like this is good enough. But this might not really be my first go-to answer sometimes, and I end up saying some things which might not be appropriate for a certain room. And someone might think of it as, hey, maybe that guy isn't serious enough about this, or maybe he doesn't. I just in my head thought that that would be the more interesting thing to say. Like right now, I could have given you some answer, but I felt like this is more interesting.
You were both appropriate and interesting. Question to you, and this is the one we ask everyone. In your opinion, Arush Lakhani, do you think sales is cool?
Yes, I think sales is very, very cool. No disrespect to any other profession, but I don't think you get this sort of freedom with your time. You know how much you need to work when. This is like a sport. Also keeps you like very, very in all the time. You don't have to. One of the things people struggle a lot with these, internal office dynamics and how do I showcase my work and all of that. I think sales is every month is a scorecard. Every quarter, you get measured. You can take that as a stressful thing, but I also feel like that sales is if you have the means of being better than someone else. Sales is a profession in which you wouldn't be left wanting for like that need isn't there of you doing something extraordinary other than just your work. So if you're just very good at your work, sales is a profession where it'll come up. You have you will get rewarded at the end of the year. You will get your money. You will get your trophies. You will get the recognition. Apart from that, also like you're always at the edge of what's happening. You will learn about a new technology and not just like know it from a curious researcher point of view, but you're always having these interesting conversations with people. Otherwise you have no business talking to. Like a CEO of a firm. Why is he talking to me? I'm in that room because I can probably sell. So yeah, I think sales is super super.
Thank you so much, Arush. This conversation was equal parts interesting, exciting, and also useful for what we believe will be a lot of people looking at how to navigate through their country, deal with stress, look at everything from the first principle basis. So, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you had a good time.
I did. Interesting questions. It was fun talking. You don't get these moments sometimes where you're just sitting down and like reflecting on your journey. And also, thank you guys for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah. One.